It all started with one phone call I never wanted to get. I was sitting on my couch that Saturday afternoon, trying to ignore the dull ache in my stomach, probably because I'd just seen her again, my wife, Lisa, smiling way too brightly at her phone, her fingers trembling as she texted. I know I should seen the signs earlier. Red flags waving in every glance, every half-lie, but you get blind when you think everything's perfect. That day was supposed to be about my grandmother's funeral. I'd been dreading it for weeks. She meant everything to me, her stories, her smell of lavender and vanilla, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. That's why I was already on edge when my phone buzzed. I saw her name, my best friend. I felt a jolt of something, disbelief, suspicion, maybe both. I hesitated, then answered. Hey, I need to talk. His voice was shaky, almost nervous, not like her. That immediately set me on alert. What's wrong? There was a long pause. I don't know how to say this, but I was with Lisa yesterday at the funeral home. The world tilted, my stomach dropped, my hands clenched into fists. I could hear her breathing shallow and quick. You're lying, I managed, voice sharp and cold. I wish I was, but I'm telling the truth. We were together, Tom. I swear I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. And I'm so sorry. I couldn't speak. My mind was racing, images of Lisa, her smile, her touch, all twisting like a knife in my gut. I felt a surge of heat rise to my face, my palms slick with sweat. Supposed to be my best friend, I finally managed, voice trembling. How could you do this? I didn't plan for it, I swear. It just happened. I didn't want to hurt you, Tom. I really didn't. I ended the call then and there, my hand trembling as the phone slipped from my grasp. My knees went weak and I sank into the sofa, clutching my head. The world around me blurred, the muffled sound of the funeral, the scent of lilies and dust. Everything felt like a fragile illusion shattering. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, their faces haunted me. Lisa's fake smile. Shameful confession, the way my stomach had flipped when I first saw his name. How had I missed the signs? The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way Lisa flinched whenever I got close to her phone. Now it all made sense. For days I just walked around in a fog of disbelief. My mind kept replaying that moment, trying to find some room to breathe. I kept asking myself, had I ever really known her, felt loved, or was I just fooling myself for years? This betrayal sliced deep, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to get past it. The worst part, the pain wasn't just because she cheated. It was because I trusted her. I trusted that I had a partner who loved me, who'd be honest. Instead, I got lies, betrayal, and a punch to the gut that made me question everything. And that's when the plan started forming in my mind. Revenge. Not some petty shouting match or throwing her things out the window. No, I wanted her to understand exactly what she'd done. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling, to see how much she'd shattered my life. I started collecting evidence, screenshots of her texts, copies of the photos sent, the hotel receipts from that night. I knew I needed proof. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right. No slip-ups, no mistakes. I wanted her to know I was serious. This wasn't just about anger. It was about justice. I remember holding the phone in my hand, staring at the pictures of her and feeling a strange calm settle over me, like I was planning something that couldn't be undone. I'd never been good at revenge, but I knew this was my moment. She crossed a line I never thought she would, and I was about to make her regret it. The worst part, I had to pretend everything was normal, keep my composure around her. That was the hardest part. She'd come home, act like nothing had happened, like she still loved me, but I saw through it all. I saw her eyes flicker, her voice falter, the way she avoided my gaze. She thought she could just sweep this under the rug. Well, she was wrong. I was done being the fool. I was going to make her pay one way or another. I just had to figure out the best way to do it. The first step was to get more proof, more leverage. I needed her to understand that I wasn't the same man she once thought I was, that I was capable of rewriting this story on my terms. And I knew, deep down, this was just the beginning. The next few days were a blur of planning and quiet rage. I kept the evidence hidden, tucked away where she'd never find it, digital files on an encrypted drive, photos and messages carefully organized. I didn't want to seem like I was stalking her, but I had to be prepared. Every glance she threw my way, every little hesitation, told me she was already trying to figure out if I knew. I could see it in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. What made it worse was her attempts at normalcy. She'd come home, act like everything was fine, like she hadn't just shattered my entire world. "Hey, honey," she'd say, trying to kiss me, her hand brushing my arm. I'd step back, my stomach twisting painfully. "Hey," I'd reply, voice cold enough to freeze her. "Long day?" She nods, smile nervously. "Yeah, things at work stressful." I'd force myself to nod back, but inside I was seething. How could she pretend like nothing had happened? Like she hadn't just betrayed me during my grandmother's funeral of all times. That day was supposed to be about mourning, about remembering someone who meant everything to me. Instead, it turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One evening she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. Her face was too relaxed, too innocent. I kept my eyes on her, feeling the urge to tear her apart from the inside out. I'd already decided what I'd do next, how I would confront her and show her she couldn't get away with this. Then I saw it, a text message from sent earlier that day. "Can't wait to see you tonight, missed you more than I thought I would." My fists clenched. I couldn't believe the nerve. That message was the smoking gun. I already knew she'd been lying to me about staying late at work or running errands. Now I had physical proof that she'd been planning to meet, probably even the night of my grandmother's funeral. I pulled out my phone and quickly took a screenshot. My heart pounded hard in my chest like a drumbeat of impending chaos. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about the complete erosion of trust. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, my vision blurring at the edges. Later that night, I sat down and wrote out my plan. I needed to confront her, but I had to do it right. No screaming, no accusations, just cold, calculated. I wanted her to see that I knew everything, that I'd been watching her, gathering every piece of her lies. I decided I'd leave the evidence lying around, let her find it herself. I'd plant the photos on her phone, the screenshots on her laptop, just enough to make her realize I was serious. Then I'd call her out calmly with the proof in my hand. The morning came and I deliberately left my phone on the bed, the evidence file open on the screen. I knew she'd see it when she got up. I watched her, hidden behind a corner as she picked up the phone, her eyes widening as she saw the photos and messages. Her face paled. What is this?" she stammered, voice trembling. I stepped out of the shadows, my expression cold. "That's what I've been waiting to see. All of it, your texts, your hotel receipts. I knew something was off and now I have proof." Her hands trembled as she tried to speak. "Tom, I can explain." "You don't need to explain," I cut her off, voice steady but icy. "You lied to me during my grandmother's funeral. I trusted you, Lisa. I thought I loved you." My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed on. "And I thought was my friend. Turns out she's just as much a snake as you are." She looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't interested in her tears. This was her moment of truth. I had the evidence and I was finally going to confront her with it. "I want you out of my house, Lisa. Pack your things and leave. Don't bother calling me. I don't want to see your face again." Her lips trembled, but she nodded as if she knew she'd pushed her luck too far. "I'm sorry, Tom. I never meant to hurt you." "Sorry isn't enough," I snapped. "You destroyed everything we had. I don't know if I was ever truly loved by you or if I just fooled myself into thinking I was." As she gathered her things and left that morning, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd done what I had to, but the ache in my chest wasn't going anywhere. That betrayal had carved a scar so deep it might never fully heal. Still, I knew I had to get rid of her once and for all. Now, with her gone and the evidence in my possession, I could finally start planning my next move. The revenge I had in mind wouldn't be messy or violent. It would be smart, it would be clear, and it would show her exactly how much she'd lost. I sat back in my chair, staring at the digital files, and realized something. I wasn't just fighting to punish her. I was fighting to reclaim my dignity piece by piece. Because if she could betray me like this, I had to prove I was stronger than her lies. I was going to make her regret the day she ever crossed that line, and I already knew how. After she finally left, I sat in silence for a long while, staring at the empty doorway. The house felt colder now, emptier. I could still hear her footsteps fading down the hall, the faint click of her door closing behind her. That sound should brought relief, but it only amplified the silence wrapping around me like a shroud. I knew I wasn't done. Not yet. The evidence was just the beginning. I had to make her understand that I was serious, dead serious, about how deeply she'd crossed a line. That meant I had to be patient, strategic. This wasn't about a quick emotional outburst. It was about sending a message she'd never forget. My plan started taking shape as I sat there, rubbing my palms on my jeans, feeling the burn of anger simmering beneath the surface. I wasn't just going to cut her loose. I was going to make her see how much she'd lost, by making her realize that she'd turned her back on something real, something worth fighting for. First step, I'd take control of our shared accounts. I already had her password. She'd been careless or maybe just arrogant enough to leave it in the open. I changed her email password first, then her social media logins. I wanted her to feel the chill of losing access, of being cut off from a world she thought was forever hers. I made sure she couldn't contact or anyone else involved, at least for now. Then I set up a burner phone, one she'd never suspect. I'd use it to communicate subtly, to keep an eye on her reactions. No direct threats, just small, calculated moves, leaving her unsure whether I knew more than I was letting on. That night, I went through her phone, copying more messages, more photos, every lie, every betrayal. I kept them all locked away in a secret folder. I wanted her to understand that I was always watching, always one step ahead. I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. The next morning, I scheduled a few emails to go out to her friends and family. Not to blow her cover, but to plant seeds of doubt, subtle hints that she'd been unfaithful, that her motives had been selfish. I crafted a message that sounded innocent enough but planted a seed of suspicion. Nothing overt, just enough to make her look over her shoulder. While she was still asleep, I took the chance to pack a small bag of my own, not because I planned to leave but to be ready. I wanted her to see that I was prepared for whatever came next. I left a note on the kitchen table. Don't come back. I've had enough of your lies. Simple, cold, final. When she finally emerged, her face was pale, her eyes darting around the house, probably trying to figure out what I'd done overnight. She looked at the note, then at the evidence I left on the table, her own messages, the photos I'd printed and left out in plain sight. Her jaw clenched, her hands trembling. "You've been spying on me," she whispered, voice trembling. I looked at her, trying to control the storm inside. "You wanted to see if I knew. Well, I do, and I'm not done yet." She backed away, her eyes full of panic and guilt. "Please, Tom." "No," I cut her off sharply. "You lied during my grandmother funeral. You betrayed my trust in the worst way possible. I wanted to see if you'd own up to it, but now I see you're just a coward who thought she could get away with everything." Her shoulders shook as she tried to hold back tears. "I was wrong. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Save it," I said, voice low and hard. "You're done here." I watched her stumble out, her shoulders slumped, clutching her purse. She looked like a ghost, a shadow of the woman I thought I knew, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. I still had one more move, something that would put an end to this nightmare for good. As she disappeared out the door, I closed it behind her with a final, decisive click. The house felt quieter than ever. The walls, once filled with memories, now echoed only the sound of my own breathing. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the bitter burn dulling the ache deep inside. I was free, but the anger still simmered beneath my skin. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about rebuilding me, about proving that I was stronger than her lies, that I could rise from this broken mess. I stared at the evidence I'd collected, screenshots, messages, photos, and felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life, and I was just getting started. The days after she left felt like walking through a fog. I kept busy, but every quiet moment was filled with the ache of betrayal still fresh. I pored over the evidence I'd gathered, making sure everything was organized, ready. I knew what I wanted to do next. There was no turning back now. I had to make her see what she'd lost, how far she'd fallen. I spent hours drafting what I'd say, how I'd present all of this. It wasn't about petty revenge. It was about making her accountable. I wanted her to understand that her actions weren't just a slap in the face. They were the end of everything we'd built, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I set an appointment with a lawyer just to understand my options for divorce and any legal steps I could take to protect myself. I wanted everything done by the book, no loopholes, no mistakes. I also called a private investigator I'd found online, someone who could help me gather even more proof if needed, but I knew I already had enough. My plan was about psychological impact, not destruction for its own sake. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, just kept it all under wraps. The last thing I wanted was for her to get wind of my plans. When I saw her face, broken and guilt-ridden, I knew I'd made the right choice. Still, I didn't want to be reckless. I was cautious, methodical. I'd learned a long time ago that revenge is a game of patience. One evening, I invited her back over, just a simple let's talk kind of thing, even though I knew what I was going to say. I wanted her to feel the pressure, to see I was serious about ending this on my terms. She arrived, her eyes puffy and red, her posture tentative like a criminal walking into the courtroom. "Hey," she said softly, avoiding eye contact. "Hey," I replied, voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." She sat down, her hands trembling in her lap. I know I screwed up, I'm sorry, I really am." I looked at her cold. "Sorry isn't enough, not anymore. I've got everything I need. I've been watching, listening, waiting. You thought you could get away with this, but you were wrong." Her eyes widened and she looked like she wanted to say something, but I cut her off. "You betrayed me during my grandmother's funeral. You lied, cheated, and let's not forget, you used my best friend to do it. Do you understand how much that hurts?" I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "No, Lisa. I don't want excuses. I want you to see what you've done. That's why I brought something." I pulled out the folder with all the evidence, screenshots, texts, photos, laying them out on the table. Her fingers trembled as she looked at the images. "This isn't true." "Oh, but it is," I interrupted sharply. "I've got everything, and I want you to know I'm done. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I'll make sure you never get to hurt me again." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Tom, I swear I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said. "You broke trust and I'm moving on. I want you out of my house by the end of the week. I want nothing from you, no contact, no explanation, just go." She looked like she wanted to say more, but she nodded and got up. As she left, I closed the door behind her, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. My house was finally mine again, but the ache in my chest refused to go away. I sat down on the couch, the evidence folder beside me. I knew I'd achieved my goal. She was done, and I was reclaiming what was mine. Yet inside I felt hollow. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about healing, about proving I was stronger than her betrayal. I realized I'd have to rebuild everything from scratch, trust, love, maybe even myself. But I was finally ready to start over, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. One thing was clear, this was just the beginning. The real work was still ahead. I'd planted the seeds of her downfall, now I had to watch them grow. And I'd do it carefully, patiently, until she understood that what she'd lost was irreparable. The house was eerily silent after she left. The silence pressed down on me, heavier than I expected. I sat there, staring at the evidence I'd laid out, screenshots, photos, the texts that sealed her fate. I felt a strange calm mixed with an undeniable exhaustion. This was the moment I'd been planning for days. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a line I couldn't come back from. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to breathe freely. The rage that had fueled my every move was starting to ebb, replaced by a cold clarity. I'd done everything I could to make her see that I knew that I was serious. Now I had to prepare for what was coming next. I called the lawyer again, confirmed the divorce papers were ready for signature. I double-checked the evidence was securely stored, backed up, and ready for court if needed. I also contacted the private investigator, who confirmed he'd been watching her, gathering more intel. I didn't want to be reckless, but I knew she was capable of anything. I had to stay vigilant. That night I stayed up late, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Part of me questioned whether I'd gone too far, whether I was seeking revenge simply to mask the pain. But deep down, I knew this was more than that. I needed her to understand that acts have repercussions. That betrayal isn't just a wound, it's a scar. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I'd make sure she felt the full weight of her actions without sinking into desperation or anger. I wanted her to see that her lies had consequences, not just for me but for her too. That meant a calculated move. I prepared an envelope with all the evidence, screenshots, copies of the messages, the hotel receipts, and left it on the kitchen table where she'd find it. I added a short note. This is just a reminder. You cannot run from what you've done. It's over. I knew she'd see it when she returned that day. I also set up my phone to record her reaction. Not to use it to humiliate, but to have proof she'd seen the evidence, that she understood what was coming. I wasn't playing games anymore. When she arrived later that afternoon, her face was tense. She hesitated before walking into the house, eyes darting everywhere. She reached for the envelope and slowly opened it. Her eyes widened as she started to go through the contents, her face draining of color. "Tom," she whispered, voice trembling. "What is this?" I crossed my arms, standing just a few feet away. "Proof," I said softly, "that I wasn't blind to what you did during my grandmother's funeral, to me, to us. I want you to understand that I've seen enough, and I'm done pretending this didn't happen." She looked at me, tears pooling in her eyes. "Please, Tom, I didn't mean for any of this to get so out of control." "You didn't mean?" I echoed, voice rising just a little. "That's your excuse. You lied, cheated, betrayed what little trust I had left. And now you want me to believe you didn't mean for it." She sank onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. "I thought I was doing what I needed to do. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything." I felt the anger boiling again, but I kept my voice steady. "You lost everything long before I found out you lost me, and now I'm walking away. I've scheduled the divorce. All I want from you now is to leave and never come back." Her voice cracked. "Tom, I loved you. I still love you." "Love," I scoffed, bitter. "That's a good joke. Love doesn't cheat during a funeral. Love doesn't get caught lying. Love doesn't destroy someone's life and then ask for forgiveness like it's nothing." She looked like she wanted to argue, to justify herself, but she knew it was pointless. I'd made my decision. I'd done everything I could to make her see the damage she'd caused. I turned away, grabbing my coat. "You're out of my life, Lisa. Don't come back, and don't bother trying to contact me. I hope you realize what you've lost, though I doubt you're capable of understanding it." As she packed her things, I left the house, feeling a strange sense of finality. I'd handed her the evidence, the proof of her betrayal, and now it was over. The house, the marriage, everything. I was finally free to start healing. But beneath that relief, there was a quiet, persistent voice whispering that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about me reclaiming myself, about knowing I deserved honesty and respect, even if I'd lost it. I walked to my car, clutching the keys, feeling the weight of everything I'd been through. I was determined to move forward, no matter how much it hurt, because I knew in my heart that I'd done what I needed to do, and that was enough for now. The house felt completely different once she had gone. The walls seemed to breathe a little easier, though I still felt the ache of betrayal weighing on my chest. I'd handed over the evidence, slammed the door on her lies, and finally I was free to breathe without that suffocating shadow hanging over me. But truthfully, I wasn't expecting relief, just a strange emptiness I hadn't prepared for. For days I kept to myself, slowly piecing back my life. I went back to work, reconnected with friends who knew bits of the story but hadn't seen the full picture. I kept telling myself that I'd done right, no matter how raw I still felt inside. I still wondered sometimes if I'd been enough, whether I'd missed something that could have saved us. But then I remembered the feeling in my stomach that day I found the messages, the way my pulse raced and my hands shook. That was the moment I realized I deserved better. I'd made a clean break, but I knew I'd carry the scars for a long time. Still, I was proud of myself for finally taking control. I didn't do it out of spite alone. I did it because I finally understood my worth. I wasn't just a fool for loving her. I was someone who deserved honesty, respect, and loyalty. One afternoon, I sat outside in the sun, feeling the warmth on my face and the cool breeze on my skin. I glanced at my phone and saw the divorce papers had been filed, the final step in closing that chapter of my life. I smiled bitterly, realizing that I'd had to do it myself. No one else was coming to save me from this mess. I had to be my own hero. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the keys to the house. I walked over, unlocked the door, and stepped inside for the last time. The house was silent, but this time it felt like a fresh start. I turned around, locking the door behind me, and watched as the house receded into the distance. That's when I finally let out a long, shaky breath. I looked up at the sky, the clouds drifting lazily overhead, and felt a strange sense of peace. My hands, once sweaty with fear and anger, were now steady. I had faced the darkness and come out the other side. I knew I'd get through the pain, that time would heal these wounds, maybe not entirely, but enough that I could breathe again. I'd learned to trust again, to love again, but now I'd do it on my own terms. No more lies, no more betrayal, just me standing tall, finally free, and that's what matters most. I may have been devastated, but I wasn't defeated. I'd taken everything she threw at me and turned it into my strength. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to break everything down and then rebuild yourself from the ground up. I took one last look at the house, then turned my back and started walking away. The past was behind me now. I was ready for whatever came next, because I knew one thing for sure: I was enough just as I was, and no betrayal could ever take that away.